Hey, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about money stories, energetics of money, as an extension of yesterday, which we introduced a little bit more woo. And I guess hopefully by the name of the podcast, Beyond the Close, you accepted the presupposition that we'd be talking about more than just sales tactics. If not, I'm sorry, but I guess you're still here. So there's a part of you that's a little bit curious. But today we're going to be talking about money stories and how particularly if we go just beyond strategy and we really start looking at what's our relationship to money, what do we believe about money, and how they can actually affect our results, and how it's hard for us to hold two things in duplicity, which is I would love to create more money in my business, yet I also at the same time believe that money is evil and that people that have money are bad and that rich people are not like me and I'm different and I can't have that. And so I want to take you through a couple of processes that I do with my clients that I thought might be interesting today to maybe change your relationship with money. So without further ado, let's just dive straight in. The first thing that I recommend all clients do is we elicit something called your money story or your main money memories. How's that for an alliteration? Main money memories essentially is understanding, if we think about when we go back to when we were children, what was our parents' relationships with money? What were my earliest memories with money? And what did we make them mean? And so one of the ones that always comes to mind for me was we didn't really have a lot of money growing up. And I remember one particular night, it was freezing cold in our house. We had a very cold house in a valley in a small town in New Zealand. And we had a treat night. And the treat night was, it was just the three of us. It was mum, dad, and me. It was 2 pies and 2 cans of lemonade. And the reason why that was a treat night was because dad would have 1 pie, 1 can of lemonade. Mum and I would share half a can of lemonade and half a pie. Now, back then, pies are $3, right? So that was $6 for pies and $1 for each can. It was $8. And that was our special treat. And there were other special treats that we had as well, where every now and then, like I'm talking once every 6 months, we'd go out for a special treat. There was this place in the small town that we were living called Ruby in the Dust. And they had these large hot chocolates that would have a chocolate fish with them. So our treat every 6 months, like special occasion, birthdays, celebrations, that kind of thing, was to go to Ruby in the Dust and order a hot chocolate with a chocolate fish. And that might have been, what, $8? But that was it. No food, nothing, couldn't afford that. And so it was really interesting observing in my own money story, what do they make it mean about money? And as you can imagine, there's never enough money. We don't have enough money. And some other more complex ones of like, having no money means connection, which is sounds strange, right? But if you think about the meanings that that child brain gave those events, was that, hey, look, we have no money and we're happy. And so how does that play out when you're an adult? Have no money and you're happy. I got myself into a lot of debt when I started this journey. I overinvested. I never was really good with money, not when I was in my early 20s. And I would do stupid shit. I would overspend. I didn't even look at books like Robert Kiyosaki and understand assets and liabilities, and I just stacked up liability, way more than I could afford until it all came sort of crashing down and I really had to dig myself out of that hole. And I'm still paying, the consequence of that today because of the bad decisions I made. And I would say this, through a couple of things. Number one, I wasn't financially educated around money, but I also had identity beliefs around money, which were based on my stories, my money story, which was like, you don't need money, or like no money means happiness. And we don't come from money, or we're not the kind of people that have that money, or money is really hard to come by, or there's just not a lot of money. All of those stories were meanings that I'd given myself from those upbringings when I was younger. So this is something that I encourage a lot of clients to look at is like, what's your money story? What do you believe about money? And there's a model in here that's really interesting as well that I borrowed from a lady called Sharon Pearson, founder of the Coaching Institute in Australia. And she calls this the 4 levels of money. And the 4 levels of money is how we can understand our relationship to money, whether we spend it, invest it, whether we make it, whether we manage it well. These 4 levels. And when we understand these levels, it gives us an insight as to our level of maturity with money. If we don't understand these levels, we can really get stuck in our, what would you call them, blind spots, right? This model helps reveal the blind spots. So if we don't observe those blind spots, you become like me who puts himself into like $80,000 worth of debt when he's like 25, and then he has to start paying that all off, like doing stupid shit like buying a Mercedes, $60,000 Mercedes that you can't afford on stupid interest rates. And so this four levels of money, the four levels are: level one is your ability to make money. And I've seen this in a lot of my clients, in the sense that I haven't met a business owner or a sales professional that isn't good at making money. Typically, you got into that profession because you can make money, or you desire to make money. So you have this channel is somewhat clean. You can always make more money, but the irony of making more money is, if we aren't managing well the money that we do have, our nervous system will freak out about having more. And so in order for you to make more money, you actually have to get better at managing money, which we'll talk about in a moment. And so level two of this is our ability to spend money. And so if you were like me, you had an overspending pattern. So I would spend more than the money that I made. And you can also underspend, which is rare, but these people's relationship to money is like they never, ever, ever, ever spend on themselves. And so they have a real issue receiving more money, because in some sense they're hoarding it and they don't want to circulate it, or they feel guilty about spending on things. And I observed this in my parents early on, where, let's say, for example, you could pay $30 to jump on a plane that got you there at a better time, right? So there were two flights that you could choose. There was the 6:15 red eye that would get you there at 8:30, and that was $99, or you could pay $120 and you could leave at 10:30 and get there about lunchtime and feel much more refreshed. Now, my parents would always take that red eye flight to save $30. And this is this psychology of people that don't spend money, is they don't value that $30 and the impact on their energy and their time and all that kind of stuff. They just don't believe they're allowed to do that. So that's the blockage there. Obviously, the blockage on the spending money is you just spend way too much. You live way beyond your means. You have no ability to keep any left over. So that's level two. Then level three is all about your ability to manage money. And managing money is similar to receiving money, but I would say managing money is being aware of your finances. And what I mean by that specifically is like tracking and having a budget. So basically every month, one of the money habits that I have is I'll go into our statement, go into our business credit card, and I'll just look at all of the things, just make sure, are we within our parameters of what we like to spend? Are there any recurring, subscriptions that shouldn't be there? Are there any expenses that are too high, too low? So I'll observe where our money is spent, because I want to manage it better. And then when it comes to management, we have like a system that I borrowed from a book called Profit First. Can't remember the name of the author, but it's a really good book. It talks about a system for money where the rough breakdowns are like, 10% of your money goes to your ability to play, 30% goes to tax, 50% goes to operational expenses, 10% goes to something else, and 1% goes to contribution. And so you have this kind of bucket system that when money comes in the top, that it fills these different buckets. I'm doing a terrible job explaining it. There's much better YouTube videos. It's not my realm of expertise. But basically, you have a system for the money, which is how you do better at receiving and having more money, right? You actually have built a system. And so, for us, that system looks like we put 10% aside to spend, or we put 50% or 45% away for operational expenses of like our lifestyle expenses, 10% into investments, and et cetera, et cetera. And the goal for us is to increase the level of income that we make so that we can put more into investments and keep our monthly lifestyle expenses the same, because we're following this like system, and obviously pay taxes as well comfortably. And so this is the management money. And I didn't have this when I started, right? So I had no idea what my credit cards were like. I would just, I would spend and spend and spend. I had no idea what my interest rates were like. No idea what my saving rate was like. I'd have multiple accounts, different money. I just wouldn't care about my money. And this is another interesting thing where it's like, why would we receive more money if the money that we have, if we're not a good steward of the money that we have right now? And I think there's like biblical context for this as well, where it's like, why would God give you more money if you're not stewarding the money that you already have? You don't have to be religious to believe in that, but your higher self, whatever. Why would you receive more money if you're not already effectively stewarding the money that you did have? And so this is this management of money level. And then the last level is the level of the ability to invest money. So have your money make money, essentially. But in order to get to that fourth bucket, you've got to be good at managing, because if you don't manage your money well, you don't spend less than you make, and you don't increase what you make, you can't really invest anything because there's nothing to be left over. So this is relatively straightforward, but it's also about becoming educated. So like, again, for me, like I wasn't educated. I bought a house when I was 22 with the help of my parents. And then, it went up probably about $150,000 worth of value back then. And then I moved to Australia. Now, instead of putting that $150,000 into an ETF or a series of shares that paid like 7% compounding over the next 10 years, I didn't. I just spent it because I didn't have a strategy, or I didn't understand that fourth box of investing money. What does it mean to invest money? What are the options for investing money? I didn't know about ETFs. I didn't know about property. I didn't know about treasury bonds. I didn't know about all private equity. I didn't know about all these different things that I could have done with my money. I wasn't educated. And so how can we make better financial decisions if we're not financially educated, if we don't go and learn that in advance? And the very least that I could do if I realized I had a gap was start reading books in that space. And so, for the last 10 years, I've been focused on upping my financial education because I didn't have a very good financial education. I actually had none. I didn't really care. And it's not necessarily a fault of anyone other than myself, but I also believe that school doesn't really prepare kids for it. And one of the things that we'll do with our kids is we'll help educate them in the different ways that their money can make money, the power of compounding interest and all that kind of stuff, making sure that you're living below your means, some of that kind of thing. And I think this is really, really critical, but we've kind of missed that. And then I would say that the final piece of all of this, so once we have these 4 levels of money, there's one other model that I share with my clients that's super powerful, and it's called financial upper limits. And so financial upper limits comes from this book called Gary Hendricks, The Big Leap or The Giant Leap. I can't remember the name of his book, but this book is super powerful because it talks about how we have these glass ceilings that once we approach, we tend to shy away from. Another metaphor is like a thermometer, a financial thermometer, where if you were to reach that 100 degrees at the top of the thermometer, you can't go any further because the thermometer would explode. And so we kind of have this programmed in us from a young age as children, a certain financial upper limit. And as we approach that upper limit, we tend to slow ourselves down. We tend to sabotage. We tend to lose motivation and drive to move away from that financial upper limit. And this is something that I personally observed when I moved from New Zealand to Melbourne and I started working in a different company. I effectively doubled my income, right? So I went from about $80,000 a year to $130,000 plus commissions plus superannuation, which was about 10%. And so I was earning close to 2 times, maybe 1.6 times what I was earning in New Zealand, because if you also do the conversion rate, Australia is about 10%, worth 10% more than New Zealand. I was earning really, really good money. And so my internal thermostat was set at 80,000. It wasn't set at 150, 160 when you totaled everything up. And so what happened was one of the first things I did, funnily enough, they call it novated leasing. Another name for novated leasing is salary sacrifice. So you can sacrifice your salary pre-tax to lower your tax burden, but you also lower the amount of money that you receive. And so what happened was I decided I would go to this novated lease and buy a Mercedes, and I would drop my taxable income. So I wasn't making, immediately $130,000 a year. I've been making much less. And what they did is it dropped my income all the way down. But then I started making more commission because I was making more sales. And so what I did was I got myself into debt to try and even out this financial thermostat that was clearly stuck around this just under $100,000 a month. And so where I see this with clients is it might be a specific commission level that the person is struggling with. It might be a business income level that the person is struggling with, and they just can't break through. And what I would say is, go back to these 2 podcasts, I would look at the energetics of what they want to feel, of their limiting beliefs, but I'd also look at the money stories that they're telling themselves. What does it mean to double their income? Because I guarantee you now, and then we see this with lotto winners as well, where these lotto people, they become millionaires overnight. And because their nervous system is not comfortable holding it in their bank account millions of dollars, or, they haven't got the identity of someone that is a multi-millionaire. What they do is they stack up liabilities. They get all of these things that take money out of their account. They build them, build them, build them. They don't invest. They don't get that money to make more money because they don't have the education. They don't know how to manage it. They don't know how to steward it. They don't know how to get that money to make them money. Like if I had $10 million and just put it all into shares and just live off the interest, like what's $10 million at 7% per year is crazy. Like even 5% on dividends, it's like you're set for life. But they don't do that, right? Because they don't have that education, and it's far beyond their financial thermostat. And so they sabotage it. They whittle it all away, which is why you see a lot of winners start to become broke more often than not. So I'd love to know, like, do you find these sidetracks into these behavior models, this coaching that I do behind the scenes with my clients, helpful, useful, interesting? Because if they are, I love to keep diving into them because I do love it. I want to be able to talk about more than just sales with you guys. And this is sort of my outlet to do that. So I hope this was super valuable. And if it is, leave us a comment, share it with someone that you love, or even just flick us an email, sales@calebthesar.com. Just say, man, I love that episode. That episode was really cool. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.